Hi, I'm Andrew Turkanis of Leatherworks. I'd like to explain a little bit about the leather measuring gauge, how we measure thickness of the leather, and why we measure leather thickness. The leather gauge itself has not changed very much in over 100 years. A gauge like this was used by my great-grandparents back almost 100 plus years ago now. The gauge itself is pretty standard, where you're putting pressure on your thumb here, the gauge is being lifted up and then thus measuring on the top of the gauge here. I'll explain to show you how. So when the gauge is depressed, the gauge is going down, depressing on the leather itself, displaying the thickness on the top of this gauge here. The gauge itself is able to be moved around the leather so you can check the thickness around the hide itself. So this gauge is very old, and today we are not using this gauge. So we have upgraded to a more industrialized gauge as so. On the gauge itself, it works very similar, where we're pushing down on the handle and it's depressing and moving the gauge up and down. At the 0 measurement mark, meaning that there's 0 thickness of the leather, we're going to be putting the gauge in the leather itself and checking the thickness of the leather. We are able to move this gauge all the way into the center of the hide to check the thickness in the center. We're able to check it in the middle, and we're able to check it on the edge. There are several types of gauges available on the market, and they're all going to be working very similarly. The most important thing is to be sure that you're going to be using the correct thickness for your product itself. There is no such thing as a better thickness, but a different thickness in general. There are also very small pocket tools that work exactly the same as larger tools as I showed before. These can be used to be spot checking small pieces of leather, or after you have already cut your product, to ensure that the cut piece of leather is the right thickness for the job that you're going after. This can be used to spot check on the small edge of the leather. As you can see, it does not go too far inside the leather itself, but you can read the gauge very clearly. On the gauge itself, it's displaying in 2 different thicknesses. One will be millimeter thickness, and one will be ounces in thickness. Both are used interchangeably in the leather industry. Typically, millimeters are going to be used in European-style tanneries, and ounces are going to be used typically in American-style manufacturing plants. Both are very easily converted online, and also on the gauge itself, the dial will display in both ounces and millimeters. Thank you.